brave men and women who have served our country faithfully often need our help to successfully transition back into civilian life. Brave Radio is here to highlight veterans and the companies who are making a difference in our veteran community. And now, the host of Brave Radio, Eve Nasby.
Welcome to Brave Radio, where we are focused on engaging our veterans and making a difference in our business community. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, here to highlight the best and brightest that San Diego and this nation have to offer. We have an amazing show planned, you guys, today, so let's get started. First up is the most incredible Paul Falcone from Cox. Hello.
How are you, Eve?
I am well. How are you doing?
Just fine, thank you.
And not only are you the Vice President for Human Resources of Cox Communication here in San Diego, you are the author of not one, not two, not five, but 10 books.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. I don't know where it comes from. It's a good hobby.
Well, you know what? One of my most favorite books is Boots to Loafers. And since this is all about military, all about our veterans, I wanted to kick the show off first with this incredible book that you've written called Boots to Loafers. Talk about the premise of the book and what our listeners can find when they crack open the cover of this incredible book.
Oh, sure. John Phillips was the person who came up with the idea of the book.
Okay.
And he is a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, now working at Coca-Cola in Atlanta in finance. Mm-hmm. And he reached out to me and he said, Paul, I know you've written books on career and hiring, both sides of the desk, for the candidate and from the hiring manager standpoint. Would you consider partnering with me? And this was, I think, about 2013 even. I thought, you know what better way to give back? And I thought this was just a really noble thing. So we had a lot of fun doing the book and we put it together.
And the different sections in here are incredible. So you talk about transition, which we're going to talk about in a couple segments too, with our friend from Miramar Federal Credit Union, who's sitting right here with us. He is going to talk about some transition stuff. But in your book, you've got transition, you've got transformation, integration. Talk about these different sections in the book and what information is in here for the listeners who want to read this book.
Well, I think the first thing is I wanted to take a very common sense approach to this and not make people feel overwhelmed. There is so much information and there's so many resources. And I think, so many employers out there want to do the right thing. It's actually very cool to hire, veterans these days. Right. And that's a really nice thing, but it's also easy to go into information overload. So that was the first step. And then the second thing was to set the expectations properly. I think sometimes people feel like that first job has to be the perfect job.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is it doesn't. Right. You're probably going to have several jobs in those first 5 years out. Mm-hmm. So don't, just work on cash flow and benefits for step one, and don't worry about the quote unquote perfect job, at least not right now. You're not ready for that yet. And that's the same for anyone coming out of college or anyone coming out of high school or whatever it happens to be. So then we moved into the specifics, the tactics. How do I build my resume and how do I do the interviews and what kind of questions should I be asking and what should I expect in terms of salary negotiations? And then we kind of move that to the offer and the acceptance into the onboarding piece. And, what's the difference? Culturally, what are the ethics that you'll find in both publicly traded and private companies? And how do I transition in so that it's comfortable for me and I can make it comfortable for everyone else? It's a wealth.
It's like a treasure chest. A
treasure trove.
A treasure trove of information. One of the things I saw in your book is don't fall in love with your resume. I think oftentimes veterans or not, they have one resume and they stick with that one resume and they're wondering why it doesn't work for all positions. So talk a little bit about why you should not fall in love with your resume.
It's going to change every time. You're going to re-emphasize different types of things depending on the kind of role that you're applying for. So one of the little tips I give in the book is when you send a resume in, when you upload it or you email it to someone and say you're going after a company called XYZ company, it should be resume_Paul Falcone _XYZ. Because you're going to have so many different ones, you're not going to remember which one you used, and there's nothing wrong. And in some jobs, you're going to want to emphasize your technical skills. Other jobs, the fact that you've got international experience. It's just how much space do you want to dedicate to it? But almost each time you're going in for an interview, it's okay to tweak your resume a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that.
So talk about demilitarizing your resume. It's another one of the things that you have in your book.
Yeah, the Department of Veteran Affairs has some good stuff on its website that talks about how to change some of that language around. And one of the things is, the verb command is a great verb.
Yes.
In the private sector, you'd probably want to say lead or supervise or manage. So some of the things that you have to be careful about is not not sounding too militaristic in your resume itself. And the websites are very good because there's a bunch of them. You pick one that you're most comfortable with, but it'll talk to you about how to translate what you did in the military and what it might sound like in a civilian type of resume or interview.
You're right. Because I think maybe as a civilian, I might be a little intimidated to interview someone whose resume I can't really read. And when you put command in there, I'm thinking, geez, do I need to salute you when you walk through that door?
Exactly.
Right? And so it just kind of breaks down those barriers, that communication barrier, the language barrier, when you demilitarize your resume. So in your book, you also talk about phone screenings, courtesy interviews, that kind of stuff. Tell us about that strategy and why that's important. Okay,
so most companies are doing phone screens these days before they invite the candidate in because it saves the companies a lot of time.
Right.
The knockout factor on a phone screen is usually 40 to 50%.
Wow.
And the reason is they just want to make sure that it's a good personality fit and the person has a good understanding, like a self-awareness. Do they have the right desire factor? Are they going to be a good fit? And you can tell a lot of those things in just 10 minutes on the phone as opposed to an hour in person.
Yes.
So that's the first step. The second step is when there are courtesy interviews, what they call exploratory interviews, go on them. Those are oxygen.
Yes.
They really are because those usually turn into full-time offers. And there's a very healthy ratio of, exploratory interview to offer. That is real. And so people sometimes think, I don't want to do that. They're probably just doing that for me to be nice. The reality is no one's that nice. They wouldn't be bringing you in unless they thought there's a good possibility of hiring you.
Yeah, time is money, right? And you're in corporate America, and that's important. You're listening to Brave Radio in conjunction with Military Mondays here on KCBQ AM 1170, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. Follow us on Twitter at Brave Jobs or like us on Facebook to stay up to date with the latest news and trends. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, here with Paul Falcone, Vice President, Human Resources, Cox Communication. Your list goes on. You have written 10 books, and the one we're talking about right now is Booths to Loafers, Finding Your True North. And it's all about transition for folks coming out of the military into the civilian workforce. Can you talk a little bit about the private sector mindset? We were going into the resumes, then we're going into the interviews. Talk about the private sector mindset when you approach an interview.
It's a good question. I think there's a definite gap in terms of people who haven't been in the military. They don't really understand what military people do. And so part of your job, part of your mindset as a candidate is to go in and do some education on this and make it comfortable for them. I have seen that there are times when candidates are so formal. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, whatever. In the private sector, that's too much. And I do think even when you write a thank you note or something, it's okay to use a contraction. It's okay to say I didn't as opposed to I did not.
Good advice.
And I think you just have to be comfortable in your own skin because the private sector people aren't quite sure what your orientation is, what your needs are going to be. And the truth of the matter is these days, like I say, it's very cool to hire veterans. They're looking for a reason to do so. Your job isn't to go in there necessarily to convince them to hire you. It's not to not convince them if you know the difference, right? Because you want to make sure that they're comfortable and they can relate to you. And as long as that's the case, the fact that you're in there with your resume, they've already vetted your resume. You wouldn't be in there if you weren't minimally qualified. Now it's a matter of personality connection, and you just have to be comfortable in your skin.
I've had some people that I've interviewed in the past who come in there and they're proud as a peacock, and their confidence was actually misconstrued as arrogance. And so to your point, you have to be very, very careful. You're not in there to hard sell me to hire you. You're in there to make me like you. People want to hire people that they like. They feel like it's going to be a good culture fit. That's your job. So to that point, you talk about assessing the interviewer's style, what they're looking for, what they'll likely ask. And I also want you to tell our listeners, if you guys are out there looking for a job, if you're interviewing, you're looking for a promotion, or you know somebody that is, Paul, can you talk to them about what they should ask at the end of the interview? Because I think people miss that part.
Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of people, it's like after a good interview, the employer says, so do you have any questions? And they're like, nope.
Oh,
thanks a lot.
That's death right there.
Yeah, it is. It's like, you mean you want to come to work for us for the next 5 years? You can't think of one question. So I think to start with that one, Eve, I think you have to be careful not to ask what I call filler questions. How long has the company been around? And
well, you should know that by looking on the web, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Get out.
So that part of it is kind of a no-brainer. You also don't want to ask selfish questions. So how long would I need to spend in this role before you see a promotion coming or something along those lines?
Or how about how much does this position physician pay?
Yeah, even initially, you have to be at the right time for that question to come up. And if it comes up before the relationship is ready for that, it's going to seem very selfish and benefits and tell me about my time off. Let's not talk about that. Right. But if you ask some questions that seem to make good business sense, I understand we've been talking about the primary duties of the job. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the secondary responsibilities, things that maybe happen once a quarter, maybe twice a year? That's a good question. You can ask a question that's more personal that says, Miss Employer, if you don't mind, I kind of took the liberty of looking you up on LinkedIn before coming in.
Nice.
And I saw that you've been here for about 4 years. And can you tell me what initially attracted you and what you feel makes this company stand out? Those are questions where, people want to talk and they just kind of need a safe environment to do so.
Right.
Now, the other thing I was going to say to the first half of your question, which is interesting to me, is some employers are really not very good interviewers. One of the books I'd written was called 96 Great Interview Questions to Ask Before You Hire. And it's the way I like to do it is to show them how. So if you got an interview with a salesperson, boom, here's 10 questions and what to expect in the responses. Same thing if you're interviewing a college kid on campus versus a senior executive. They're different types of questions. But the reality is where a lot of companies are going, and I think this is a mistake, but I see it more and more, is they're asking the same exact questions of all candidates every time. And as soon as you sit down, you've been in this relationship for 30 seconds when they start hammering you and machine gunning you with, give me an example of a time when you did this and give me an example of a time when you did that. My advice to employers is the relationship isn't ready for that either. You have to ask them what brings you here today and what are your longer term goals and how do you see a career with us kind of fitting into that puzzle. Excellent. And if you took a job as a blank, which I know you're in here for, how would you explain that to a prospective employer 5 years from now? When you get someone talking about their needs, what you've actually done is you've taken the employee development paradigm and shifted it to the pre-employment phase. Before you've even hired them, you're talking to them about their career needs, and they will warm up and they will begin a bond of trust. And that's what you need to have in the interview process. And you're doing it right if every once in a while someone says, I normally don't say this in an interview, but as soon as they say that, that's true. Now you've got the real person.
Exactly.
You've got to get beyond all that interview hype.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We are running low on time, but speaking of resources for companies who are hiring, you've got a new book called 75 Ways for Managers to Hire, Develop, and Keep. Emphasis on keep great employees. And I say that because everybody's moving right now. The talent shortage is out there and people are getting recruited away. And how do you keep good talent? So tell us about your new book released. It'll be released in June.
Yeah, I think it should actually hit bookshelves at like Barnes & Noble and Amazon next week.
Oh, so, I'm making a trip.
It's exciting.
I want my own Paul Falcone autographed copy.
Yeah, well, you get one. You know that. Actually, the funny thing about this book is every one of my books always has a niche. And I always look at it from, I'm the average bear consumer. And what do I need? And the one thing as an HR guy that I've never had to give employees who are newly minted managers or newly hired managers is a book that brings them all on the same page. It's got to be a book with heart. It's not like just giving them an employee handbook and saying, read the policies.
Right.
It's more like, this is what we believe in, and how do you get the best out of employees? So there's a leadership offense strategy, which is motivation, engagement, and development. There's a leadership defense strategy because every manager has to know how to confront things and have tough conversations and document. But the main thing for me really was about leadership wisdom. How do you become a wise leader that people will trust and people will follow you into battle? That's what you want to be. And hopefully this book is my 20 years or so of experience all kind of merged into one. So
incredible. I cannot wait to read it cover to cover and hand it out to all my friends. So listeners, this is Paul Falcone. He is an amazing author. He's written Boots to Loafers, 75 Ways for Managers to Hire, Develop, and Keep Great Employees, and many other books. And where can we find all that you have written?
Oh, that's nice. Amazon has all my books, Barnes & Noble, and on my website. I have a paulfalconehr.com website. So
we're going to bring you back on the next segment because we're going to go to break and we're going to bring back one of our most favorite people in the whole wide world. Easter Seals of Southern California, Cynthia, is going to be with us, and you are actually connected with her. So we're going to talk more about what Cox Communications is doing to also employ veterans. You're listening to Brave Radio here on KCBQ AM 1170. We focus here at Brave Radio on matching veteran talent with innovative companies that make a difference in our community. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and we will be right back after this short break to talk to Cynthia from Easter Seals of Southern California. Don't go away. Tired of your employees being late?
There was so much traffic.
Tired of poor excuses and poor presentations?
My kid ate my homework.
Tired of employees just not being able to handle the pressure?
You mean I gotta work a full 8 hours today?
Skip the hassles and excuses and hire individuals that are trained in leadership, confident in their abilities, adaptable to change, and focused on teamwork. Hire a veteran. More than just a patriotic gesture, hiring a veteran of the United States military comes with a host of benefits and tax credits and can provide your company with valuable leadership, organization, and accountability. Allow the Brave to help your progressive business connect with qualified veteran candidates today and find out more by visiting thebrave.us. That's THEBRAVE.us.
Easter Seals Work First Military and Veteran Services provides free one-on-one personalized employment assistance for local veterans through their Bob Hope Veteran Support Program. Easter Seals' team of employment specialists is dedicated to achieving successful, long-term job placements that benefit both the veteran and the employer. Learn more about how you can receive services, connect with a future employee, or make a donation by visiting easterseals.com/SouthernCal. That's easterseals.com/SouthernCal.
Hey, boss.
Yeah.
I need to hire someone. Our workload's increased and man, I could use some help.
What are you looking for?
I need someone unlike Ben, who doesn't freak out, when the copier breaks and the phones are down and the receptionist calls in sick.
What do you need?
Leadership. I need a leader who could just get it done with little direction and ahead of time would be great. With the prima donnas floating around our department like Sally and Jason, it's a challenge, man, to get things done. I need a team player, trained in leadership, confident in their abilities, and adaptable to change.
There's only one place you're going to find talent like that.
Show me where.
Our United States veterans. Call Eve right now at 619-244-3000 or log on to thebrave.us and let's hire a veteran. It's good for business. It's good for America.
Brave is a part of America's largest service-disabled veteran-owned business, Merit Consulting. We are dedicated to placing great companies with great veterans. Call today. Welcome back. You're listening to Brave Radio in partnership with Military Mondays, where we focus on matching veteran talent with innovative companies that make a difference in our community and in our nation. Follow us on Twitter at Brave Jobs or like us on Facebook to stay up to date with the latest news and trends. I am your host, Eve Nasby, and as promised, we are back in studio with Cynthia Marinaccio from Easter Seals of Southern California. Welcome.
Thanks, Steve. It's good to be back.
It is so great to have you here. We had 13 weeks of you talking about transitions and networking for veterans and all that you do for Easter Seals of Southern California. For those listeners who don't know you, please fill us in with a high level of what Easter Seals of Southern California is all about.
Well, what we do is we help transitioning service members find meaningful employment. And meaningful employment for them is whatever it is that they want to go into, not what we find that they want to go into. And each veteran has different transition story. Each veteran has a different situation. And so what we're trying to do is just guide them in whatever steps it takes to get to that meaningful employment.
And you do an amazing job. So what happens is the veterans out there that are listening, or if you're a family member of a veteran who's looking for work, when they go to Easter Seals of Southern California, what happens first? You sit down with them, you talk, you go to Starbucks, talk about that.
Well, what we do is we sit down and we really just try and find out what it is that the veteran really wants to do, what's meaningful to them, and not just with employment, but what do they like to do, what sparks their excitement. Mm-hmm. We all have this little fire inside of us, and sometimes when we talk about a certain topic or a certain type of work, we get excited and we let the veteran know, hey, by the way, do you know that when you talk about veterans and working with veterans or working with people or working with kids, that you get this little spark inside you, and we need to explore this further.
And that's so interesting because our last guest, Paul, talked about how veterans might just take that first job and they think they have to make this first job work. And it might not be that spark. They might not have that, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it's okay to let that go. But what you guys do is actually identify that spark right out of the gate. There is no guessing, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's important because we don't want the veteran just to get a job for a couple months. We want the veteran to be able to explore their potential, their future, and really guide them along the way. So if we do the steps ahead of time to figure out what it is that's meaningful to them, what they're interested in, what they have the skills for, we can make sure that's a success right out the gate.
Yep. And you've helped so many people, Cynthia. We had a few of your folks here on the radio talk about their success stories. Karen, Sandra, I mean, come on.
Yeah, Karen is an amazing lady, and she is so talented. She came in, and when I initially met with her, she had some housing struggles, and she was so articulate, and she was going to be a success. We just had to help her out, get her through a few bumps in the road. We helped her get housing. She got a job, doing great work, and now she is out there navigating and helping recruit additional veterans for her.
That's right.
For her
She's
company.
giving back. She is giving back. And I think that's important for our listeners to understand that Easter Seals of Southern California is just not a way for you to find employment. Any needs that you might have, you guys are a resource to help them. And so you can point them in the directions that they need, whether they need housing assistance or finances or employment or whatever. And I love you, Cynthia, because you do not give up. You are relentless in helping these veterans. And so there's a great story I want our listeners to know. And I know I'm bragging and you're going to blush, but it's my job. So you had a gentleman come to you. He had a family. He didn't have a job, and you are not going to let him go. So you went to a strip mall, and you went to Vaughn's and Albertsons, and talk about that story. And you didn't give up till you got him a job.
Well, there was a young man I connected with, and he didn't have a vehicle. He had 2 small children under the age of 3, and he needed a job yesterday. And I looked at him and I said, okay, where are we willing to work? I know that employment was his main goal. Sometimes we need that job and we need it yesterday.
Yes.
And so I said, okay, if you're willing to work with me and work hard, I'm willing to work for you. And I went into a CVS store and talked to the manager over there and said, I have a very talented veteran who's willing to work hard for you. He lives right behind here. Do you have any employment opportunities for him? And she said, well, we don't have anything yet, but let me get back with you. And she called me the next day. She opened up a job requisition, and he applied. We helped him with his resume, and before you knew it, he got the job. So
amazing.
Whatever it takes, as long as the veteran is engaged and ready to hit the ground running, I'm willing to just go the mile.
And you do. And you call and you follow up and you make sure that they're okay. It's just Easter Seals of Southern California is blessed to have you, Cynthia.
Oh, thank you.
You're incredible. You're listening to Brave Radio here in conjunction with Military Mondays on KCBQ, AM 1170, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. Follow us on Twitter at Brave Jobs or like us on Facebook to stay up to date with the latest news and trends. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, with Cynthia Marinaccio. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad I can pronounce your last name. So talk about networking. That's one of the most important things I think that our veterans need to understand, and it's important to do. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know what? As far as networking is concerned, it's something that we all have to do. And many times that's how we get the jobs, is by reaching out to the people that we know. And just like Paul, our guest earlier, I was able to reach out to him and provide opportunities for veterans who may not have that opportunity. Sometimes when you try to apply for a job, it doesn't go anywhere, but as being able to be somebody who can help network the veteran to where they need to be, then they don't get lost in the, what I call minutia of employment.
Well, you know what? We chained Paul to the desk, so we didn't let him leave after the last segment. So I'm going to drag you back in here, Paul, and talk about that networking. So you connected up the last time we had you two on the show together, right? There was a young lady here, and you saw her, you talked to her. Tell us about how Cox Communication views the veterans and what types of programs you guys are looking at perhaps creating to attract and hire veterans, and maybe using Cynthia's services too.
Ooh, and we already are.
I know. I kind of set you up for that one.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's funny because I sit on the Diversity Council at Cox here in California. And the idea was we looked at it. We got together, I think it was March or April, and we said, what do we want to do as our go-forward goal? Mm-hmm. And what we all decided was, military, first of all, it's San Diego. We're such a big state or a big city for having military. But we thought military makes so much sense for the kinds of jobs that we do too.
Right.
So we have about 200 of our veterans, of our 1,800 employees, about 200 of them are veterans. Many of them are interested in becoming mentors. And besides the mentor program, we want to figure out how to reach out and expand and figure out how to bring these folks aboard. So it's a work in progress right now because it's only a few months out of the gate. But it's something that we're all focusing on in the San Diego market, and it's really exciting.
And so the last time on the show, there was a gal here, and you guys connected, and now she wants to move back to D.C., but we've got another person that you connected him with, Cynthia, who's interviewing today. And so you almost have this pool of ever it's a filled pool of veterans, right? For talent.
We have a full pool of talented veterans, and And you
keep pushing them over to Paul.
I'm excited to share that veteran talent with Paul.
And that's all about the network, too. So when our listeners understand you're not in a vacuum, reach out to organizations like Easter Seals of Southern California. If you're putting your application in at Cox Communications, that's great. But it's really, and Paul, keep me honest here, it's not necessarily how many applications you put into a database. It's really who you know within that company.
It's usually the case. I mean, most of the time when you look at the pie chart of how people are finding jobs, it is usually through their network. The challenge, I think, Eve, is a lot of times people come out of the military and they think, well, I don't have one. And it's okay. You build a network over time, and it doesn't take that much time.
Right.
You can build it fairly quickly if you know how to go about doing that. And one of the ways to do it is to research the dominant and the growth-oriented companies in your area. There's so much out there from Forbes and Fortune and Inc. magazine with the best companies to hire to work for. Which ones are pro-military? Which ones are most ethical? Which ones are the green 50? You have all these different kinds of things. It's a big business nowadays.
It is.
So even if you're moving to a market where you don't know anyone, spend some time on Google and get a feel for those best companies from all those magazines. You'll be able to have a list of 25 to 50 companies very quickly. And then when you introduce yourself, it's very easy to say, I've taken the liberty of researching your organization. Congratulations on the, blah, blah, blah award. And I would love for you to consider my resume. It's a very nice way, even if you don't like selling yourself, it's a very humble way to go in, and there's no pressure associated with it.
And we're going to have Exhibit A and Exhibit B, the two people that I think are the most amazing networkers in San Diego, Kevin Cortes and Phil Kendro, are coming up on our later segments, and they're amazing at this. And I'm going to have them tell you some of their secrets of all that they do. So, talking about Easter Seals of Southern California and all that you do for our veterans, what else do you want to add? We talked about networking. What else do you want to say?
Actually, I do want to give a shout out to Vons, because they are a huge advocate of Easter Seals Military Veteran Services and our Bob Hope Veteran Support Program. We recently received a generous grant from the Vons Foundation. They gave us over $500,000 for our long-term sustainability.
My goodness. Go Vons.
That's why I just have to give them a shout out. Thank you, Vons.
Right. Thank you, Vons. Outstanding. And now all that money goes into your program and allows you to reach out to more veterans, provide more services for the veterans. That's great.
Absolutely. So now we're growing, and now we're going into Orange County and providing services there as well. So as long as we keep, doing what we're doing, we're just going to make a greater impact, and we can always use generous donors to help us in this transition.
That's great. And you know what? For those listeners, if you have the ability to donate, or if you know somebody that needs these services are free to service members, right, Cynthia?
Absolutely.
Absolutely free. So tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you.
You can get a hold of us at 760-737-3990, extension 21. Or you can email us at mvi@essc.org.
M as in Mary, V as in Victor, I as in Indigo, at
essc.org. So EasterSealsSouthernCalifornia.org.
Perfect. And if you guys missed any of that because you're driving, just jump on our website, thebrave.us. It'll all be up there too. Thank you so much for being a part of our show again, Cynthia. It's an honor to have you.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you,
Paul,
Eve.
thanks for jumping in too.
My pleasure.
You guys are doing great things together, and I can't wait to hear these success stories. So stay tuned, right? You're listening to Brave Radio here on KCBQ AM 1170, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and as promised, we're coming back with two amazing networkers, Kevin Cortes and Phil Kendro. Don't go away.
Hey, boss.
Yeah.
I need to hire someone. Our workload's increased, and man, I could use some help.
What are you looking for?
I need someone unlike Ben, who doesn't freak out, when the copier breaks and the phones are down and the receptionist calls in sick.
What do you need?
Leadership. I need a leader who can just get it done with little direction and ahead of time would be great. With the prima donnas floating around our department like Sally and Jason, it's a challenge, man, to get things done. I need a team player, trained in leadership, confident in their abilities, and adaptable to change.
There's only one place you're going to find talent like that.
Show me where.
Our United States veterans. Call Eve right now at 619-244-3000 or log on to thebrave.us and let's hire a veteran. It's good for business. It's good for America.
Brave is a part of America's largest service-disabled veteran-owned business, Merit Consulting. We are dedicated to placing great companies with great veterans. Call today.
Easter Seals Work First Military and Veteran Services provides free one-on-one personalized employment assistance for local veterans through their Bob Hope Veteran Support Program. Easter Seals' team of employment specialists is dedicated to achieving successful, long-term job placements that benefit both the veteran and the employer. Learn more about how you can receive services, connect with a future employee, or make a donation by visiting easterseals.com/SouthernCal. That's easterseals.com/SouthernCal.
Tired of your employees being late?
There was so much traffic.
Tired of poor excuses and poor presentations?
My kid ate my homework.
Tired of employees just not being able to handle the pressure?
You mean I gotta work a full 8 hours today?
Skip the hassles and excuses and hire individuals that are trained in leadership, confident in their abilities, adaptable to change, and focused on teamwork. Hire a veteran. More than just a patriotic gesture, hiring a veteran of the United States military comes with a host of benefits and tax credits and can provide your company with valuable leadership, organization, and accountability. Allow the Brave to help your progressive business connect with qualified veteran candidates today and find out more by visiting thebrave.us. That's THEBRAVE.US. Welcome back. You're listening to Brave Radio in conjunction with Military Mondays here on KCBQ AM 1170, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. As promised, we're back in studio with one of the best networkers I know, Phil Kendro. Phil, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Always appreciate it.
You know what? You're so welcome. You have done so much, and you've got a great story. So we're going to talk about Mount Soledad Association in just a minute because our listeners need to hear about this amazing event. But I think, as we talked in previous segments about the importance of networking when you're transitioning and even before you transition out, tell us your story.
Yeah, so, we were talking about like that year or 2 years. I was very fortunate about 5 years before I left the military, which has almost been a year now. Next week will be 1 year.
Happy anniversary.
Crazy fast. But about 5 years before I got out, and he said, hey, it's time for you to kind of get out there and learn more about the community. And I said, I'm still looking for promotion. And he's like, nope, time to jump on LinkedIn, time to get out there and meet some of our business leaders and officials. And was really fortunate because working at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar at the time in operations, we didn't just do operations, we did a lot of community relations as well, because that partnership with the city, county, and the military is so important here in San Diego. We're so tied in. We had large events like the Centennial Naval Aviation event that was coming up.
That was huge. I loved that event.
Almost 200 aircraft over the bay, largest flyover since World War II.
For an I'm not a pilot and haven't been in the military, but as a civilian, that was like heaven to me. All those planes, it was awesome.
Well, what was awesome
and that was all your fault, right?
Yeah, it's partly my fault.
It's all your fault.
My boss, my mentor, actually, him and I kind of came up with the plan originally. But it was great because what it did was it got me out to talk not just with some of our military folks, the Coast Guard, the Navy, that's been so awesome here, as well as with the Marine Corps, but the Port of San Diego, the local fire department, police department, FBI, working with the business officials to help out to sponsor some of these aircraft that were flying over.
Yeah.
And so he got me 5 years before I got out to start really saying, hey, you need to network now.
Right.
Fast forward then to about the last year and a half, before I got out of the Marine Corps, started learning more about organizations called Center for Wealth and Legacy, Corporate Alliance, a group called Life Lounge, which is a cross-generational mentorship group, and really bringing in people and establishing those networking circles that are so, so important, which you can't do just sitting at home, of course. You had to get out and about and meet somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody and kept going from there.
Right. And those are civilian organizations. Was it hard for you to find organizations to get plugged into?
One of the things I tell all, because I know that Kevin and I both do a lot of veteran mentorship for those guys that are either getting out in the near future or if they're actually looking for some type of change in their life. It really wasn't that difficult because, again, I had good mentors that also we kind of were able to translate military jargon and be able to speak normally in front of people and not be some robot, I know, which I have to tell guys to do sometimes. But again, we were just fortunate that circles intertwined and all of a sudden you met somebody that wanted to connect you with 5 other people and that person to connect you with 5 other people.
Right.
And came across great leaders. I mean, you received mentorship from people like Ken Blanchard and Brian Smith from Ugg Boots.
Yes.
Gentlemen, we also had recently was Chris Van Gorder, CEO of Scripps.
Wow.
And to have some very intimate settings where you've got 40, 50 people and having one-on-one conversations at a point, it's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Well, we have got Phil Kendro here, and you are going to talk about, because all of these organizations you got plugged into, now you're kind of serving in leadership, some of them in 12 short months. So let's talk about the Mount Soledad Memorial Association.
So I was very fortunate during a San Diego Military Advisory Council, a gentleman who had retired out of the Marine Corps about 4 years ago, Neil O'Connell, came up to me and said, hey, I'd really like you to be a part of my organization. So for the last 2 months, I've been on the board of trustees for the Mount Soledad Memorial Association. And we have two big events each year, Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Yeah. And so next Monday from 2 to 3 p.m., we've got our Memorial Day celebration up at the national memorial up there at Mount Soledad, which is awesome. It's
now, are you going to have 200 planes fly over that too?
No, we're not going to have that many planes. We will still have we're going to have a four-man missing ship formation sponsored by a gentleman named John Flippin, friend of mine, one of these great other aviation community partners that we have with him, private owners, San Diego Sky Tours, all these great organizations that veterans helping veterans, because there are veterans in the sky and there are veterans on the ground. It's a great deal. But what we're going to do is basically we're going to have Old Town Trolley's going to provide complimentary shuttle service from the memorial from nearby Mount Soledad Presbyterian Church.
That's great.
As well as the French American School, because of course parking up there is going to be limited.
It can be challenging, especially with an event like this where all of our listeners should be thinking about taking their kids, your families, your aunts and uncles and brothers, and going up here and celebrating and really honoring those who have fallen for this country. So tell us more about the event. What do we expect when we get to the top?
So again, it's next Monday, May 30th from 2 to 3 p.m. We're going to have a Marine Corps Recruit Depot is going to help out with the rifle team, color guard, as well as their band's going to be up there.
Oh, wow.
The Village Veterans of San Diego are going to be helping out, which is a great organization. Mark Bailey from CW6 is going to be helping out MC, and he's actually retiring pretty soon from CW6. It'll be one of the last big events that he does up there. We already talked about the Missing Man Formation. T-34 is on, led by John Flippin. And then a few of our guest speakers we're going to have up there, because we're commemorating President Theodore Roosevelt, is we're actually going to have the commanding officer, Captain Clapperton, from the USS Theodore Roosevelt going to be there, as well as Phil Roosevelt, who's a distant relative of President Theodore Roosevelt, from editor of Barron's Magazines, coming all the way from the East Coast to speak with us too.
A real Roosevelt.
Yes, real Roosevelt.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then internally, we've got some great speakers, Tony Anthony, Bruce Bailey, former president, also one of the Veterans of the Year, and another Veteran of the Year, Ed Berger, will all be up there as well to give their speeches during the day.
What an outstanding event. And it's going to be beautiful weather because we finally have sunshine back in San Diego.
Yes. It's going to be still May, so it's not going to be June gloom, so hopefully it'll still be sunny that day.
Awesome. Phil, thank you again for being a part of our show and representing Mount Soledad Memorial Association. Tell us how our listeners can get more information about this.
Okay, two ways, of course. Go on the website, www.soledad, that's SOLEDAD memorial.com, or also you can give us a phone call at 619-787-6633 for any press inquiries or anything else you're just interested to know about the Memorial Day event.
Awesome.
Next Monday, 2 to 3 p.m.
Be there or be square. It's going to be amazing.
Thanks.
All right,
always
Phil,
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You're listening to Brave Radio here in conjunction with Military Mondays on KCBQ AM 1170, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. I'm your host, Eve Nasby. And again, thank you, Phil Kendro, for being a part of our show. We're going to go to Kevin Cortes, who is another great networker. We're going to talk about his experience and also Miramar Federal Credit Union. Don't go away. Tired of your employees being late?
There was so much traffic.
Tired of poor excuses and poor presentations?
My kid ate my homework.
Tired of employees just not being able to handle the pressure?
You mean I gotta work a full 8 hours today?
Skip the hassles and excuses and hire individuals that are trained in leadership, confident in their abilities, adaptable to change, and focused on teamwork. Hire a veteran. More than just a patriotic gesture, hiring a veteran of the United States military comes with a host of benefits and tax credits and can provide your company with valuable leadership, organization, and accountability. Allow the Brave to help your progressive business connect with qualified veteran candidates today and find out more by visiting thebrave.us. That's THEBRAVE.us.
Easter Seals Work First Military and Veteran Services provides free one-on-one personalized employment assistance for local veterans through their Bob Hope Veteran Support Program. Easter Seals' team of employment specialists is dedicated to achieving successful, long-term job placements that benefit both the veteran and the employer. Learn more about how you can receive services, connect with a future employee, or make a donation by visiting easterseals.com/SouthernCal. That's easterseals.com/SouthernCal.
Hey, boss.
Yeah.
I need to hire someone. Our workload's increased and man, I could use some help.
What are you looking for?
I need someone unlike Ben, who doesn't freak out, when the copier breaks and the phones are down and the receptionist calls in sick.
What do you need?
Leadership. I need a leader who can just get it done with little direction and ahead of time would be great. With the prima donnas floating around our department like Sally and Jason, it's a challenge, man, to get things done. I need a team player, trained in leadership, confident in their abilities, and adaptable to change.
There's only one place you're going to find talent like that.
Show me where.
Our United States veterans. Call Eve right now at 619-244-3000 or log on to thebrave.us and let's hire a veteran. It's good for business. It's good for America.
Brave is a part of America's largest service-disabled veteran-owned business, Merit Consulting. We are dedicated to placing great companies with great veterans. Call today. Welcome back. You're listening to Brave Radio here on KCBQ AM 1170, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. Follow us on Twitter at BraveJobs or like us on Facebook to stay up to date with the latest news and trends. As promised, we're back in studio with Kevin Cortes of Miramar Federal Credit Union, former helicopter pilot.
Yes.
And CH-53s. Yes, the Super Stallions. Those things are awesome. And I'll bet you miss it.
I do miss it, and I miss the squadron life. It's hard to go to fly anything else once you've flown those.
Right. Well, how about Phil? He flew AV-8s.
He flew Harriers, right?
Yeah.
And now he flies aircraft that are 70 years old. So,
yep.
So I mean, it's the joke is they're both vintage, but no, he still gets after it. Good for him. Yeah.
So he talked a little bit about his transition. I want you to talk about yours too, just so our listeners, a lot of our listeners are military or they're connected with the military, talk about your transition.
So when I was the detachment OIC, my last deployment in 2011, I came up from Japan. I knew that the light was at the end of the tunnel for me in 3 years. So I started networking. I started to break out of my quote unquote uniform 3 years prior to my transition.
Wow.
So what I did is, because we are all comfortable in our own skin, right? So I obviously a Marine officer, so all my friends were Marines, or all my neighbors, were supposed to be military. So what I did is I wanted to engage in the community because my one choice was to stay here in San Diego. And I think that's important that a lot of people don't know where they want to go.
Right.
And that's kind of priority number one. So staying in San Diego, I allowed myself some time to meet civilian people. And what I did is, obviously I'm a huge golfer. I love the sport. I love watching it. And everyone looks at me like I'm nuts because they're like, well, if I need to take a nap, I'll watch golf. I'm like, that's great. I can watch it all day long. It's wonderful.
Right.
So when I started transitioning, I started to join organizations like Phil mentioned, which is San Diego Military Advisory Council. What allows you to be part of that group is that they build a bridge between the San Diego military community and the San Diego business community. And every month, they have a breakfast there. So I was able to meet civilians that were either in real estate or government contracting, or the Padres have a table there. So it was really diverse. And at that point, it started to get a little overwhelming because we all don't know what we want to be when we get out, or what our skills are.
Right.
So I joined several other civilian golf groups just to meet people as well. I met a lot of different people from different...
so you're blending what you love and your passion, which is golf, with the networking piece.
Right.
So it kind of removes that intimidation factor.
It's actually kind of how I met my boss. I don't know if I told you this story or not, but Paul and I met playing golf, and it was just a circumstance where we were part of a civilian golf group, or I guess it's a regular.
And Paul is Miramar Federal Credit Union.
Right. He's the president CEO of Miramar Federal Credit Union, Paul Sosha. And he had no clue I was in the Marine Corps, and I had no clue of whom or he was or what Miramar Federal Credit Union is all about. And so when I was in my transition in the high full-time job search, I contacted him, and he's like, Kevin, he's like, we're a military credit union, and I don't know anyone that's in the military. You're the only one person that I've met. And would you come and consider just coming in and talking? So my story is a little bit different because it was I was kind of one for one, where I had my first interview, first in salary negotiation, and first job acceptance all in the same day. So within 2 hours, I was like, okay, I'm going to work for this credit union, and it's been a good ride. But the key was I got hired before my end of active service, which is very rare. I know Phil Kendro and my other buddy Brian, who you know, they retired and then they took some time, even in their networks, which was surprising to actually get employed.
So the secret is networking, and that's what we're kind of wrapping this show around today, is the value and the gold, really, the nuggets of networking with civilians, so that you have sort of a safety net when you get out. You've got that network already established within the civilian world before you even step out of the military. So now, as a result of that, talk about some of the organizations you are officially involved with.
So what I've done, and just for radio listeners, what I do, I'm the chief military officer at Miramar Federal Credit Union. Miramar Federal Credit Union is one of 2 military credit unions in San Diego County. Our goal here is to be the military's choice for credit union and for financial resource and wellness.
Wow.
So what I try to do is I try to build a bridge between Miramar Federal Credit Union and the military community. Okay. There's 725,000 people, San Diegans, that are somehow associated with military, whether they're active, whether they're retired, reservists, or family members. And so it's a large network. And so what I'm involved in now is the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, which I see you at the Defense Veteran Military Affairs Committee, where I'm involved as a mentor at the North San Diego Business Chamber, which Cox Communication is a member of as well, in their mentorship program. And to me, my biggest passion right now is being a mentor to other veterans. And I've actually brought Cynthia in from Easter Seals in kind of the mix, because the best way to meet veterans is to know someone that speaks the language, and Cynthia's a veteran as well, but to kind of get into that network where we're starting to give back in an informal way. Another program, we bought a table at San Diego Military Advisory Council, which is good. But there's another, the San Diego Veteran Coalition, which we meet once a month. And Miramar Federal just became a brand new member. So we're very excited about that.
So go back to the North County Chamber, because I think that's really important. Because again, listeners are military focused. They might be in transition or know somebody who is in transition and struggling and needs a mentor. Talk about that mentorship program.
So it's a very unique and very successful program. The program is called Operation Connect, and it's been in existence for just over a year. And the goal, very small goal, is to get about 100 veterans in through the transition classes that are free of charge. And it's a one-day course where, in addition to what the veterans get with the transition GPS or the transition readiness seminars that the Marine Corps and the Navy provide, it's a one-day hands-on workshop where guest speakers like myself will go on, and I'll give them my story and encourage them on what networks and circles to be a part of. But also, it gives them more detailed help on resume, a little more detailed help on what to wear, and essentially is to answer their questions on what do I expect. And so the biggest fear we all have as veterans is, what do we want to do? And are we going to be able to meet that bridge? So the program is designed to be the ultimate network program in San Diego County. And every month, these veterans are given a 6-month honorary membership, just so every month they can be part of the program, but also they can be part of the Regional Connect Mixer, which is the second Wednesday of each month all over North County. And so you have several hundred businesses that are represented, not just the HR departments, but people that work in sales, people that work in marketing, people that work in IT. And they just network and they talk and they get to use their brand new Operation Connect graduate skills on how to talk to someone, and 7-second and 30-second elevator speeches on basically new talent. And so what I try to do, I purposely look at all the small groups of veterans that kind of get around the same cocktail table. I just beeline right for them and say, hey, you know what? I know you guys are all military, because what we do, we all hang out at the same watering hole, right? We're like a bunch of camels. So what I do, I say, hey, there's a lot of businesses, go talk to them, and I'll help encourage them. I'll introduce the businesses to them so they're not as intimidated to meet someone in a suit that has longer hair that looks like they've been in a position of authority. And so it is a little different for them.
That's great. You know what? We're going to have you on other segments, because I really want our listeners to understand, A, this is free to them. B, you get a 6-month free membership with the chamber. You've got this mentor who's willing to help walk you through this very challenging and very difficult time while connecting you with business leaders in the community, that's where you're going to find a job. Mm-hmm. Just like you did on the golf course, that's where you're going to find work. It's not filling out the applications as we were talking about with Paul earlier on the show. It's who you know within your network, who you know within these organizations. And I think that's the key. Well, we're running short on time. Tell us how we can get a hold of you and all the things that you've been doing to help veterans. Talk about the North County Chamber.
So North San Diego Business Chamber is located in Rancho Bernardo. Go online to just Google North San Diego Business Chamber, and more importantly, Google Operation Connect.
Connect.
It's the only one of a kind in San Diego County, and I believe is one of a kind in, I think in the region.
Wow.
So I haven't researched any other chambers, but this is a very, very good program because you get to use what you've learned. And the one thing that I can tell you is that we need mentors. So I think there's over 500 companies that are associated with the North Business Chamber, and so we solicit all those companies. Hey, you have employees that want to be mentors. Please, by all means, contact us. And so we will connect a veteran with a mentor that doesn't have to be military, that is already integrated. I know Sony's has a very good veteran.
HP's up there too, right?
That's correct. Yeah. HP, Sony, Cox, Petco's up there. Yeah.
All right. Well, that sounds awesome. So any civilians out there who are interested in helping veterans, you are looking for a way to do this. Maybe you're a leader in the business community. Maybe you're an HR manager. Maybe you're a hiring manager. You've got something to give to these veterans who are just looking for somebody to give them a hand up, right? Mm-hmm. Not a hand out, but a hand up, and kind of help them navigate these frightening waters of us civilians, the civilian workforce.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really love having you on the show, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're amazing. All right. I think we're ready to wrap up our show. What do you think?
I think it's a wrap.
All right.
About that time of day.
All right. I'm Eve Nasby, and you've been listening to Brave Radio, here in partnership with Military Mondays on KCBQ AM 1170, The Answer. If you want to find out more about how you can hire top veteran talent, or if you're interested in being a guest on our show, like Kevin Cortes from Miramar Federal Credit Union, Paul Falcone from Cox Communications, Cynthia from Easter Seals of Southern California, and Phil Kendro, send us a tweet at Brave Jobs or like our Facebook page. From all our guests and me, thanks for joining us. And until next Monday, may God bless our veterans and God bless America.
Thanks for listening to Brave Radio. If you know a veteran looking for work, or if your company is hiring, call Eve at Brave at 619-244-3000. Give her a tweet at Brave Jobs and connect with them on Facebook. To be a guest on the show, visit thebrave.us.
Tired of your employees being late?
There was so much traffic.
Tired of poor excuses and poor presentations?
My kid ate my homework.
Tired of employees just not being able to handle the pressure?
You mean I gotta work a full 8 hours today?
Skip the hassles and excuses and hire individuals that are trained in leadership, confident in their abilities, adaptable to change, and focused on teamwork. Hire a veteran. More than just a patriotic gesture, hiring a veteran of the United States military comes with a host of benefits and tax credits, and can provide your company with valuable leadership, organization, and accountability. Allow the Brave to help your progressive business connect with qualified veteran candidates today, and find out more by visiting thebrave.us. That's THEBRAVE.us.
Easter Seals Work First Military and Veteran Services provides free one-on-one personalized employment assistance for local veterans through their Bob Hope Veteran Support Program. Easter Seals' team of employment specialists is dedicated to achieving successful, long-term job placements that benefit both the veteran and the employer. Learn more about how you can receive services, connect with a future employee, or make a donation by visiting easterseals.com/southern